Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello, and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast where we are trekking through the past and future of Star Trek. As always, I'm your host, Mike Jones, and joining me via the magic of the internet is my co-host, Damien. Damien, how are you today?
I'm great, Mike. How are you?
This time, we won't stop and re-record, I promise. I'm
Doesn't
doing
that
great
sound spontaneous?
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell at all that we just did that again. I'm very excited because we have a guest with us today, a colleague of both of ours from our days in the crazy world of live entertainment. Steve is with us. Hi, Steve.
Hi, longtime listener, first time caller.
I am so glad that you're here. And you're joining us to talk about kind of a little bit of a twofer, because we're going to talk about Picard, which we haven't discussed too much on the podcast, and a TNG episode at the same time. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to get to know you a little bit. Like, what was your introduction to Star Trek?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I stressed about it because I have no idea. I know that Wrath of Khan was like my gateway drug. I know that was my first movie, and I just made my husband watch it the other night, and he was a very good sport.
It's slower than I remember it being.
I think it was just the movies, like the movies coming on randomly on like HBO, like during the day when I was a kid. And then I got hooked when my mom took me to my first convention in Philly.
Wait. You make it sound like it was her idea. She.
Oh, I was a sad little kid. She was looking for any outlet to get me out of the house. Yeah, she took me to a convention. Oh, no, I'm sure I saw like an ad for it and I asked to go, but she jumped on it. And the speaker was the lovely Nichelle Nichols.
Oh,
she was my first also.
Sweet.
Mine too.
Well,
my second. Oh.
She was so sweet, and she signed, I waited in line to meet her and get the autograph, and she hugged me and took a picture with me, and I still remember how good she smelled. It was a very fragrant Nichelle Nichols.
That's amazing. Wasn't she?
It was that like the kind of like grandmothery smell, like a nice classic perfume with like maybe a little Bengay in there.
She had a hard candy in her purse if you just asked,
there was definitely some butterscotch in there. Yeah.
Right. She had such an amazing energy. I'm just meeting her. She was a real ray of light. So what is your go-to series whenever you fire up the Paramount Plus or dust off your DVDs or however you consume your Trek?
I've got to say it's rewatches of Picard. It's the recent ones.
Okay.
I think the recent ones may have not spoiled the classics for me, but I'm definitely into the bigger budgets and better production values. Like watching it now, like as a production person, I see different things than I used to see as a kid.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and Strange New Worlds is just, really knocking it out of the park.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. In this season of Picard, I mean, I didn't hate season 2, but I don't know. I wasn't in love with season 2. The first couple episodes were great, and then I feel like it kind of went downhill. But production value wise, it was great. It's so cinematic now. I mean, that's just TV, right?
Well, yeah, that's all TV. And when we talk about the episode, I have many thoughts on production values.
Excellent. Okay, let's see. Some more getting to know you questions. Have you read any Star Trek novels?
Embarrassingly, yes.
That's not embarrassing.
I went through a phase. Not embarrassing, no, with pride, with great pride, yes. I went through a phase in like late elementary school, junior high, before I kind of found my high school theater nerd groove. There was a lot of like Star Trek content. I couldn't get enough of it. Yeah.
Yes. It was huge then. It was big.
Oh yeah. Did you?
I read lots of Star Trek books and can't remember a single one.
I remember a few of them. I bought a hardback Star Trek novel.
Ooh.
Oh.
Probe. The follow up to Star Trek 4. You find out where the whale probe went and what they did.
Oh, fascinating.
I don't remember anything about it, but it was a great book.
I had a couple of hardbacks too, but I think that they were from the bargain bin, you know how that would. I had one called it was a Diane Carey novel called Best Destiny, and I do not remember the plot.
I didn't read a whole lot. I mean, I didn't read a lot of the novels, period. But the ones I did read, I think Probe was the only original novel. I was the nerdy kid who would like see a movie or see an episode and then go for the novelization of said movie or episode.
Oh, for
Excellent.
sure. I have done the same thing. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and they expand the story in the novelization.
Yeah, well, how else are you going to get Savik's backstory?
Exactly. Well, and then I was the confused child who I don't remember what book it was that I had to read for class, like Call of the Wild or something, or something like that. But I had seen the movie and I was like, oh, is this the novel adaptation? Like, no, you're an idiot. Speaking of embarrassing stories, do you now or have you ever owned any toys?
Oh yeah,
just-
I collected the Galoob toys when
Oh,
they were
yeah.
first a thing. And like how the datas and the yars were very hard to come by. I had like the spotted face data, the like production mistake data.
Wow.
So yeah, I owned those toys. By the time the Playmates came out, Damien and I have talked about this, how we were both kind of like entering high school. We were finding new friends. We were finding our groove. And we were just aware enough to know that maybe we shouldn't admit how much we like Star Trek. So I kept that on the DL for those later years, and I did not embrace the Playmate toy line, which was incredible from like a collector standpoint. Their stuff was amazing.
Well,
Absolutely.
you know, the life lesson in there is that as those new friends fall by the wayside, Star Trek will always be there for you.
Exactly. That's so funny. Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I had the Galoob action figures and that little metal model of the Enterprise that they made.
Which sucked. It wouldn't stick together.
It never stayed together. And it was heavy. Like if you drop that thing
the
on your
sausage
toe,
section was too heavy. It just kind of fell right off.
right. And then by the time the Playmates toys were really rolling, I had kind of moved on. And then I ended up dating a guy in college who had collected like almost all of the Playmates toys, and then he gave them all to me. And right now you can see most of them in a cabinet behind me. I still have them. But I pretend that this is my collection, but really most of it was gifted to me.
I see they're on separate shelves. Are they grouped by franchise?
They're grouped by yes, yeah, they are actually. Yeah, they're grouped by franchise and by line. Like all the little Galoobs are together. And now they've come out with you can find them at Target. They're the same scale as the Galoobs, and they made a Wesley Crusher. I almost had a Will Wheaton, and a Guinan. So of course I had to get those because then that completes my like little collection because they're all the same size.
They matched the Galoob ones intentionally.
I think that was the idea.
That was some nerd's brilliant idea.
Yeah, right. And it worked. We're all completists.
And you do keep the Mirror Universe Christmas ornaments separate, I hope. From Hallmark.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, last question. And this is a hot button topic. What do you feel about Dr. Pulaski?
Oh, tread carefully.
Well, no, because I know I was never a hater. I didn't hate her. She just didn't fit. I think there were aspects of her as a person that I really enjoyed, and like even more so as I get older. And I forget which episode of yours I was listening to when they comment on like what an old whore she was and how she totally banged Riker's dad. Like,
yes.
She was a spicy lady, and I've got to raise a glass to her.
Well, and she was never
like. Sorry, go ahead.
She was never better than in the Worf Klingon tea ceremony.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
Which was like
Dr.
a little
Pulaski,
moment,
like,
gratuitous.
Yeah, she didn't fit in with the rest of the cast, and like probably rightfully so. She was kind of like the Elaine Stritch of the franchise, just off in the corner with her drink, just like a bitchy comment now and then. But yeah, I didn't hate it.
That's hilarious.
You know who else didn't fit in with the rest of the crew who we do love? The topic of our discussion.
The topic of our discussion. The Elaine Stritch. I love that. It makes me think of the moment in Elementary Dear Data where Data and Geordi are talking in 10 Forward, and like from the other table, she's like, "Oh, your friend's never gonna get this."
Yes.
What a bitch.
She did. She had a zinger. I loved her. Yeah.
Okay, well, we are chomping at the bit to get into today's episode. So we are going to be looking or talking about both the Picard season 3, episode 5, episode, let's say episode a few more times, Imposters, and how it relates to the TNG season 7, episode 24, Preemptive Strike. And I'm just going to say right now, big spoilers. If you are not caught up on Picard, if you've not seen episode 5 yet of season 3, just turn us off and see us next week, because I say that like I release every week.
You should re-listen to the Mirror episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead.
Yeah, there's no way we can have this conversation without major spoilers. But so now that that's out of the way, this Picard episode really served, I think, as a way to wrap up the character of Ro Laren. And okay, here's the full story. So watching this episode, Ro is on screen and they're like, Ro Laren. Like, and suddenly they're mad. They're like, Picard has this like animosity towards her. And I was like, okay, it's Ro. Like the last time we saw her, she was like playing dead with Geordi or jumping on the bed with Guinan. Like, I did not remember her final episode of TNG. So I was like, why are they so mad at Ro? What did Ro do to them?
Forgot.
Right? But you remembered.
Well, I was a particular Ro Laren fan to the extent that, you know, I may have mentioned this before, that I was raised in the mindset by my mother of writing an angry letter. And so when maybe we finished season 5, I got a little concerned because I wasn't seeing her in episodes. And so I wrote a letter to Jerry Taylor, the showrunner.
Yeah. Do you have a copy?
Of that letter? No, I didn't have a copy of my letter, but she wrote me back. She wrote back, "Dear Damien, Jerry Taylor, if you're out there and listening, I'm forever grateful that you took the time to write me back." She wrote me back, and she because I was like, she should be a full cast member. I was a big fan. I was like, this is I got a sense of what they were trying to do. You know, I was I hadn't been to screenwriting school yet, but I'd like, but I was like, I sensed, character conflict. It was compelling, and
absolutely.
And she wrote back that they very much were interested in having her more. And come to find out, Jerry Taylor was largely responsible for creating the character. That the actress wasn't interested, and that was that. But it was so I was invested, and so I very much did remember that, because I was surprised and delighted to see her one more time. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, the behind the scenes story of her disappearance in TNG, I think is related to, they offered her a main character role on Deep Space Nine, and she turned it down.
She was Major Kira. She was that's where Kira came from. Yeah.
So I think she didn't burn a bridge, but I think that there was some cold water there for a while. So they didn't,
Well, an interesting thing that I didn't realize that in like reading up for this is that she only appeared once, and the bulk of her appearances were in the 5th season.
Yeah.
In the 6th season, She appeared in Rascals.
Rascals, yeah.
Right?
Right, jumping on the bed, yeah.
Now, if you remember, Michelle Forbes is in the opener. Michelle Forbes played Roland, with whoever, it was Picard and Keiko and Guinan and Ro, right, in the shuttle. And then there's a shuttle accident. They're beamed on board and children appear. All of the other characters we see returning to their adult form. We never saw Michelle Forbes again in that episode. She literally just came in to film that teaser, which is like a 2-minute scene, and she hardly had lines. And if you remember, she ended the episode as a child and never came back.
You're right.
So that was more time to draw her mother.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's how
the synopsis.
Yeah. But that's exactly what they did. And so she really only appeared in that tiny little scene in the 6th season because she had I mean, I don't actually know the story. I don't know if you do, but it was like, clearly her relationship with the show had kind of chilled over her declining that Deep Space Nine role.
I wonder why they didn't write Rascals to have a different character, like it wasn't dependent on Rolaren being in the show.
No, it certainly wasn't.
Yeah,
that's kind of like. Oh, sorry.
No.
I was thinking about this, like knowing that we were going to talk about this episode, and then rewatching that, and then I went back and rewatched another Ro episode, and I think in hindsight, I kind of like that there were always characters that you would never see for like 2 years, and then they would randomly be back again. I was thinking of the helmswoman who never said a damn word, but she was always at the helm. And then in Preemptive Strike, when Ro came up to the bridge with Picard, he actually told that helmswoman to take a hike. Ro's back, Mr. Far Chair. But I love seeing that those same actors kind of around in the peripheral, and then the guest stars who would come back every now and then. It was just a reminder that there's 1,000 people on this ship, and we don't get to see their story every day, but they have jobs and they do things and they have lives that maybe aren't integral to whatever the alien of the week is. But I like that people would come and go. They don't have to be part of the core cast every week.
And I promise you, in 2023, those people, for all intents and purposes, extras, have a Twitter following.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a kind of a world building thing. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, I mean, I think about the episode Lower Decks, where not the show, but the episode, where they decide to focus on some of those characters, and some of them are new. But I feel like we get that a little bit in Picard. I want to know more about this crew of the ship, the bridge crew. There's this bald Vulcan woman. I want to know more about these characters.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a much better job in Picard, and I kind of started with the J.J. Abrams movies. They did a much better job of letting you know that everyone else on the ship, they know what's going on from week to week. They are part of each crisis and each mission, and they're kept informed through shipwide announcements or whatever. The people who had to stand by the windows and just literally watch to see if the Shrike showed up for that whole day.
Right.
I like seeing those dynamics sometimes, because it reminds you that there are other jobs on the ship that people are very invested in.
Well, and I think that there's something that we can credit Discovery with, which is the sort of B cast, where all of those people, where yes, they get their moments, but like Detmer and Owo, the two front seats on the bridge, they're full on characters, but they're and they get their moments here and there, but they're secondary, and that that the entire bridge is kind of filled out with these secondary characters who are who give life to the ship.
Yeah.
We don't think about them this way now, but in the original series, the other character, it was really a star vehicle for William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and D. Kelly. Everyone else were secondary players. And of course now, because of the movies, especially, we think of them all as this core group cast, but that really wasn't how it was.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Sulu, George Takei went off to do a movie and missed half of a season, and they just never reference it. It's just whatever. he's busy. I like that they're still kind of doing some of that. So let's talk about that Picard episode. It was like a lot of the new shows. It was very emotional, and it made me go back and watch Preemptive Strike and think, was there a relationship between Picard and Ro that I don't remember? Like, was there a love story there or something that I
you would
glazed
think from
over?
the direction of Preemptive Strike.
Right.
No, it was simply it was a mentor story, and it was all because I think about what a lot of this I feel like went unspoken on Next Generation and was simply Patrick Stewart as like, he walked into the poker game in the very last moments of Next Generation, and that's when, if you hadn't put it together already, you're like, this is a story of a man who's struggling to have feelings and struggling to connect with people around him, and a search for family, and this crew is his family. And obviously that was what so many of these episodes in this season are about, like, your crew is your family.
Yeah. And
he took her into his family as like a project, like in the first episode where she appears, she's been to prison already.
Yep.
She's been let out of prison by a crooked admiral who, and when she sort of, her integrity finds its way to the surface, and she rats out the admiral, and
right, she decides to trust Picard.
And
does. So he takes a chance on her. Starts.
And I think some of it is sort of like back written in that final episode, right? So she disappeared from Next Generation sort of without explanation. And she come to find out it's because Picard recommended her for this like top tier security job. And so she comes back with a sort of reason for her absence. So you're like, oh, Picard has gone on a limb for her several times. And her career and her is something that is taken to a family level by him. And so the depth of that betrayal to him, it's like being turned away by a child of yours.
That theme came back so much because for someone who was always so vocal about not liking children, not being comfortable around children, he was whether he knew it or acknowledged it or not, he was a father figure to so many.
Yes.
Like way back, starting with Tasha, he was that mentor father figure to so many people.
Wesley, the moment in Preemptive Strike when she's pretending to be a sex worker and they're having their secret meeting.
That's so uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable because he's like, what's going on? And she's like, basically, I'm having second thoughts. And because they're pretending to, be negotiating a night of passion or whatever, they can't really show it. But then he so subtly on his face reacts and then just threatens to bury her. You know what I mean? Like, well, if you do this, you'll be court-martialed. And, it's so chilling.
Yeah.
And they're so close. I mean, the way the shows were framed back then, people are unnaturally close to each other anyway. Right. But in that scene, they're because they're touching foreheads and they're awkwardly pawing at each other, which was 90s TV for sexy. But yeah, I it's crazy that I didn't remember this episode because he turns so quickly into just threatening her. And it almost seems out of character. But stepping back, what he's asking her to do seems out of character. Like the whole Maquis thing is, you think that I know that it's supposed to be complicated, and that's why they wrote it. That's why they created this, whole plot. And then they tried to do something with it in Voyager, and then didn't really go too far with it. But it just seems like Picard would step back and be like, "Wait, these are our people. Like, why are we attacking?" You know what I mean?
There's definitely some of the writing. It's not. I don't mean to say it's forced. Like the dialogue feels forced, but the story is is forced because they had certain parameters they had to work under. They were setting up the Maquis for Voyager.
Right.
I think I read somewhere, like researching for this recording, I think I read that there's a mention of someone who mentored Ro in tactical training school who were meant to think, or it was suggested probably by one of the writers, that this person was Chakotay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's a lot of setup happening that does kind of explain where Picard's character goes that maybe he wouldn't have.
Well, and she was such a fan favorite at the time. You know, speaking as someone who wrote a letter, that she, you know, so they wanted her to be the second lead on Deep Space Nine, and she said no. And so then maybe if they put her in the Maquis, then maybe, you know, because at that point Voyager was like, you know, like she could be granted like a Maquis guest spot in Voyager. It doesn't really work in that story structure because they're so far away, but you know, they're opening the door for her
or something, you know, it's possible.
Yeah, they clearly love the actress and they wanted to keep her. She just wasn't having it. She was great. Did anyone watch True Blood in its heyday?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Her arc. She had a whole arc in season 2.
Season 2, she was the villain.
And she was amazing.
She was great. And then, I mean, Battlestar Galactica.
Oh yeah, she was amazing in Battlestar Galactica.
I mean, like she was. And she
Razor.
was a villain, but she was like, and then the movie, she was like a complicated. She was not an all bad villain. You know, she was like a noble, I guess, adversary.
Right. I mean, a strong kick-ass character, actually, which seems to be a through line. She plays a lot of strong kick-ass characters, I think.
Oh, yeah.
She goes toe to toe with Edward James Olmos in that, in a way where you buy that she has him shitting his pants at various points, you know.
Yeah, she was. I didn't watch Battlestar. She was in the Mockingjay movies 1 and 2, or maybe just 2. But she was a badass, you know, District 13 fighter in the Mockingjay movies.
I forgot about that. Yeah, amazing actress, and it's interesting that, you know, in the 90s there was such a divide between TV and film that she knew how good she was, and so I think she tried to move on to a film career, and that's why she turned down Deep Space Nine, seeing it as a career downturn if she was to, you know, lock herself into a TV schedule. But luckily, you know, we got some more amazing stuff out of her. The scene on the holodeck in the bar, which I know the holodeck is just dedicated to being the bar now. I don't know. Whatever. They just want to use that set as much as they possibly can. Let's be honest. But that scene in the bar is matches the intensity of the scene from Preemptive Strike, where they're head to head. I mean, it's the other half of that scene, you know.
Well, and it lets it happen in a way where they're not concerned about appearances. Like, it is just that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And like raw.
Well, and it's just such a brilliant setup, because it's like we've now this new generation of changelings. We don't have any sort of cheat as to know that they are a changeling. And so the only way to really do it is that you got to go there with a person in a way that eliminates the possibility that they're a fraud. You've got to be convinced that they are who they say they are. And that was just a really amazing way to do it.
Right.
And I don't know who else he could have done that with.
One thing I think I was texting with you about this, Damien. One thing that this season 3 of Picard has done that I don't think anything else before it has done is you actually get the sense that these people live with real danger, like throughout their whole lives. Like it never seems dangerous in Next Generation, because you always know like the danger will be resolved at the end of the hour, and then there'll be a new danger next week.
Yeah.
But even more than that, it never feels like the writers acknowledge the stakes. Even when the stakes are super high, it never feels as tangible as it does in this season.
Well, and some really like they never really look at what would be the human aspect of a life like that, of making those choices and how it affects the people around you, and how it affects you when you don't have that anymore.
The fact that Beverly chooses to, separate her son from that life to protect him says a lot. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that at all in TNG time,
Yeah. And in subtle ways, even the moment in the first episode of season 3, in the very first scene when like Beverly's ship is being attacked, and her first instinct is she shuts the door so he can't be involved.
Yeah,
she just immediately shuts him out of the battle. Like, that was a great little moment. It was a great little acting moment, and it felt so natural, and it felt real. Whereas like in the 90s show, it wouldn't have felt as real. There would have been some contrived dialogue around it. I just feel like the stakes feel more real this time.
Well, and they never let her really be the kind of mother that she could have been to Wesley. I mean, they didn't feed that story at all. There's a reason he's brilliant, and she has to get some of that from her, but like we never see her mentoring him or protecting him, or she just gets to be really upset when he's in danger, if he's fallen on some plants that can't be damaged, and he's going to be
and then they do that weird thing where they put their foreheads together instead of
yes, again with the foreheads. What is the deal?
It's a 24th century hug. Oh, God. Well, and the other fascinating thing, the Riker had when they first sort of steal the shuttle early on in the season, right? And he says I've spent, I forget what exactly he said, but he says, I have spent half of my life in situations like these, and the other half chasing them.
Chasing the view. They were looking at the nebula. They were chasing
exactly.
The view.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
And also Deanna Troi in season 1 says, "I'm not as brave as I used to be." Holy shit.
Oh, that scene was
holy
so
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just acknowledging the lives that they lived for the first time was really nice. It's been nice moments sprinkled throughout Picard.
Yeah, it's
and
not easy.
It gives more weight to the stuff they did throughout Next Generation, and you can it helps you remember the stories and forget the limited budget or the cheesy effects. You just remember the circumstances they were put in.
Absolutely. And I think you have to keep that high, in a series like this where it's 30 years later or whatever, because normal people would have moved on with their lives into something nice and quiet. Like Deanna has done. I mean, she's but there's this compulsion to chase the thrill that's still in them, and otherwise we wouldn't have a show. But
but also even Beverly, who's made the choice to made extreme choices to keep her son safe. What does she do? She gets this ship where they live like Doctors Without Borders, and where their life is not safe at all, and they get into constant trouble. So even in trying to avoid it, they can't seem to.
Yeah.
Or they're just like us. They're just workaholics. Like, it's hard. Like, granted, their industries are very different, but your life becomes your job, and things that other people think are crazy just feel natural to you.
Yeah, and your coworkers become your family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that rings true in our industry as well. Let's talk about what we don't want to. Rose's death.
Yeah. Well, no body.
You're right.
See a
no
body.
I think she's dead.
I think she's dead too.
God, gut wrenching. Well, okay. The nitpicker in me says, why did she says she doesn't trust anyone, and yet she seems to really trust these two guards that she's with. But whatever. Because even when they are planting the bomb on the ship, she's like, what are you guys doing? I don't know. But anyway, putting that aside, just that scene with screen to screen with her and Picard again was just heart-wrenching, and this show just keeps making me tear up, which TNG never really did. Like they're pushing emotions in a way that that I'm so glad that Star Trek is going there.
Yeah. The death took its time for dramatic effect. And there are like, if I were to nitpick plot holes, like there are definitely situations that our Picard characters over these 3 seasons could have gotten themselves out of if they worked harder, but it didn't serve the overall story. It didn't, she needed to die. Like,
right,
would the real Rolaren have figured out a way not to die in the seemingly 20 minutes it took for that bomb to explode? Probably. Right. She probably would have figured out a solve, but the story needed her to die.
And here's a question, because I was not a very good detective. I was not like predicting things very well. At what point did you realize that she was Worf's handler?
Oh. I did not figure that out until
you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Until he came looking for her.
Yeah.
When she said, I have 2 agents on the ground.
Yeah.
I think I should have known.
I should have known that.
I totally did it. I totally did it. Sorry. Blonde moment.
No, I just went for the ride. I didn't have my detective hat on.
No, and I don't like to try and watch these. Maybe I was going to say the second time through with a detective hat on. I'm still.
Yeah.
They also it wasn't that long between them introducing her to the episode, but then the time that she said that, and there was other stuff going on in the episode, so you wouldn't have made the Worf connection.
That's true. Yeah, my detectives, not microscope.
Your magnifying
whatever
glass.
Magnifying glass. Thank you. I can't even get my own simile or whatever metaphor. Was totally fixed on figuring out who was a changeling. Like that's where my head was. I was like, is Ro a changeling? Like
exactly, because
we haven't seen her in so long. Like, well, then how do we know this is her? Which is what you're supposed to be thinking. But
her ridges are not the same.
Her ridges
They're
are not the same.
Thank you.
And you know what I feel like that was? I feel like because in an interview with Terry Matalas, which I need to stop following his Twitter. Like I'm hook, line, and sinker on for all of this. He said that that the way the story was structured, that they didn't have an option if it wasn't her. That this was all written for her, and that they didn't have another character who they could insert into that scene and do the same function. Which required them selling Paramount on it, which you're like, is Paramount which was an interesting detail, but also in getting her to do it, right? Because they wrote it before they were convinced that she would say yes.
Oh wow!
So my fan theory in watching this was she was like, I will not do all that weird shit that fucked up Nana visitors knows. Because she supposedly has like scarring from it all, right?
Really?
Yeah. Yes, the Bajoran makeup is not as easy as it looks. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I read something that like Worf's makeup time has been like cut in half or more for Picard, and he does look a little different. Like
he does.
They're giving him like Klingon light. He's getting Klingon light.
His ridges have smoothed a little. Yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm not mad about.
With
He's
age,
getting older,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what happened with her nose.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that she's like, I'm not doing all that weird shit on my nose.
That's possible.
Also, you guys are in theater. Do you remember what spirit gum smells like?
No, yeah, God. Yeah, and back in the 90s, they would just slap it on too. I mean, it couldn't have been good.
But fun fact is that Bajoran makeup design was designed for her.
Oh,
they were like, they said to Michael Westmore, make we've hired a beautiful woman. Don't hide her face, but make her an alien.
Oh, well, that makes sense. She was the first Bajoran.
Yep.
Because we had seen her, I think, once before as a different character in that episode where Loxana is in love with some guy who's gonna have to kill himself because he's turning 60 or something.
She guessed it. Was she? Oh, she was the daughter.
She was the daughter.
She was mad that her dad wasn't gonna kill himself.
Right.
Oh, I gotta go back and rewatch that.
Yes, she's great.
Star Trek is infamous. They find an actor that they like, and they're like, we'll
Jeffrey
do another
Combs.
alien. We'll change her forehead. No one will notice.
Right.
But also, like, sometimes they're like Jeffrey Combs. They don't care if you like, is because they know that everybody is so invested in this actor and that he plays great aliens, and he's like such a unbeatable character actor, you know.
Right. Just to be a bitchy queen for a moment, her hair, she's never had great hair as Ro. But you know, in the original series, in TNG, she had that kind of like little bob thing. But her hair was just so black, like, girl.
Yeah,
we don't buy that.
Was not great,
and it was like flat on her head, like nobody. It didn't look like, if I were to look at Ro from, you know, the 90s and aged her up 30 years, it wouldn't have been that.
However,
that's what I'm saying.
If you watch like her first appearance as Ro, and then her last appearance in the series in Preemptive Strike, her hair darkens by about 5 shades, and she gets she gets the weird like Courtney Cox Scream 3 bangs also.
Yeah.
So
but also there's
like,
something,
her hair is a journey. Like Ro's hair is a journey throughout her life.
This is like the we cannot
age.
Talk about a single female Star Trek character without talking about her hair. This is like the all back to Janeway's helmet hair. But however, I also do want to say though that when you first see her, she's kind of terrifying.
Sure.
You're like, oh, our old friend is back and she's gonna fucking put us in jail, and she is not happy. And so the hair is not really flattering the actress,
like,
but at the same time,
severe middle part, like a bully from Hocus Pocus.
It is scary hair. Yes.
Yeah, it's a little like the girl from The Ring. That's all I'm saying. They've gone severe hair with more, not to now feel like we need to talk about men too, but you were saying that Worf's ridges have smoothed. His like Colonel Sanders white hair is also severe looking. And his mustache comes together in the middle, and it never did before. And I think that's kind of
this is a Kill Bill reference. Did you know this?
Oh, is it? No, I didn't.
Yeah, the samurai, the old man.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know the character's name. Do you know it?
Pai Mei.
Yes.
I'm making that totally. I maybe.
I think maybe I'm.
You're fine.
You have to bleep that. Excuse me.
We can curse on this podcast, can't we? I've been doing it for months. Okay, all right.
No, okay. I've never podcasted before. Sorry. No, I read that Michael Dorn had an actor conversation with Terry Matlis when they were all pitching season 3.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the Pai Mei and Kill Bill was his hook. That's what got him.
Oh.
And he's that, like, I mean, Worf is my guy. This season.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's so good. The fucking chamomile tea.
Right.
And him with Riker, that moment that we all saw in all the previews, like, most of these moments.
Is he giving you daddy vibes?
Daddy Worf.
No,
because he's a terrible father.
Yes. Right. No mention of like his son, who's like, everyone else is so worried about their like parental life, and he's like totally written off that kid wherever he is.
Worf and his kid has always, to me, been like Blanche and her revolving door of children in the
Yes, exactly.
You like hear about them for one episode when they matter, and then you forget their name. She forgets their name. A different actor plays the same child next to them.
Blanche's daughter,
there have been many Alexanders over the years. Yes,
that's true.
Because he aged significantly. Because he did appear in Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of an adult all of a sudden somehow.
Yeah.
That's a very 90s TV trope that the kids can just grow up instantly.
And you know that the main Alexander, who we know from Next Generation, was the late born little brother on Family Ties. Steve knows this on Family Ties. Yes.
Another 80s 90s trope, when you're in like season 5, season 6, and your ratings are tanking, bring in a cute little kid.
Yep. And who's suddenly 5 years old and born last year. Yes.
Right. Yep. Like Raven Simone on the Cosby Show.
Yes.
Like, there's so many of them.
But I definitely went through a phase where I had gotten a bunch of like 8x10 glossies and was mailing them out to like Star Trek to get autographs, and then they came back. And I was like collecting as many as I can of like supporting guest characters. And that one came back with like a letter from the kid, and it was clearly written. And by this point, I was like old enough that I think I was like, probably in high school. And that one came back from the little kid with like a fan letter from like a little kid's fan club. And I remember being like, oh God, like this was a mistake. I am so embarrassed that I have gotten this like child's fan club letter from this with a child's autograph. I was like, this was maybe a misstep.
Handwritten by him, like written by his mom or whoever.
By his publicist or who knows. Okay. Yes. I mean, it was definitely autographed by a child in a way that made me feel really weird that I didn't like.
That's hilarious.
The child's name is Brian Bonsall, and my knowing that is not weird at all.
No, I knew it too. I just didn't say it.
Was it written as if the audience is a child? Like they assume you're a child.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Yeah, I see.
Yes. But then, of course, I wrote all of these other letters to Star Trek as an actual child that I'm sure they just thought was written by a crazy person without actually like, oh, maybe this is like a 7-year-old writing this.
Well, who did you get back other than him?
I was published in the Fan Club magazine, by the way.
Oh my!
My mom probably has somewhere. She's like, "You're a published writer." I definitely got back I think I got back a Gates McFadden, and I think I got back because there's a few that I have from conventions. I have Marina Sirtis that was signed at a convention.
Yeah,
Jonathan Frakes signed at a convention.
I wonder if they still do that. Like, I worked with a B actress once who one day in the green room she was like, I'm gonna do my fan mail, and if they had sent her a pre-addressed stamped return envelope,
that's what I did for sure. Yeah,
she would do it. But if they hadn't included that, she just threw it away, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah,
but I was also like, these people still remember who you are, and you should be happy about that. But whatever. I'll tell you who it is offline. But so do we think that this was a good end of Rose's character arc, this episode?
Absolutely. I do.
Yes. Yeah, I have no objections. I mean, I would love to keep the door open to seeing her more, but that's not going to happen. And I felt like it was the end in Preemptive Strike is satisfying because you do not expect it. Right? Like, who of your like Star Trek heroes, and granted she was never a typical Star Trek hero, but who of your Star Trek heroes betrays Picard and just leaves it at that?
Right. Yeah.
That was shocking. And to have the second to last episode end that way, it was shocking. So that was satisfying in itself, but this was like character satisfying in that it played so well into the themes of, questioning of institutions, because Picard has that blind loyalty to Starfleet in the original episode.
Right.
That the Admiral says, send Ro on this mission. And at no point does he think that it will be difficult for her or too difficult for her to do without betraying him. He doesn't consider that.
No.
He just assumes that because he instilled it in her, she's got that same blind faith that he always had. And of course, that's what she comes back about. She's like, you never understood me. You just assumed that I was like you. Oh, it's so heartbreaking. I loved it.
Yeah, this season is continuing to do what Terry has said he's going to do with this season, is righting all the wrongs. He's tying the loose ends that the fans, himself included, as a kid really wanted to see tied. Fixing all the messy endings in really satisfying ways, in really adult ways that like make sense for an informed modern audience. Like there's the politics feel real, the stakes feel real. Like it has elevated the series.
This is not the Geordie who had a hollow girlfriend.
Yeah. Although,
Oh yeah,
I am waiting to find out that mom is actually Dr. Leah Brahms.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. Yes, because I know that question is out there, and I feel like if you listen to LeVar Burton talk about the Geordie love life situation, he remains deeply offended about the way that was handled. That TV in that era or that show couldn't handle a black man having a successful, meaningful romantic life on TV. And I think that he, kind of always viewed it as that, and that episode was awkward to him, and that he didn't like that they took that character there. So I don't think that he would sign on to the real girlfriend being, or the girlfriend, wife, mom being Leah Brahms.
I felt like they left the door open though in the episode where the real Leah shows up, and they address it, and she like basically says, "You're violating me. Please shut this holodeck program down."
Right.
And I feel like they left the door open for some, if not like romance, at least some like respect and friendship. I would love to think that they continue their relationship.
In the All Good Things alternate future, was that what you were going to say, Mike?
Yeah.
That Picard refers to his wife Leah and his daughters Sydney and Alondra.
Oh fuck, I missed that.
Yes.
Yeah. I have to go back and watch. Yes. I would like to believe that he and Leah maintained their professional relationship, one engineer to another, and romance followed. I'd like to believe, as a romantic, I'd like to, even though it's a little rapey, it's very rapey, I'd like to believe that he won her over eventually.
Also, if somebody was fucking a holographic version of me, I would be so flattered.
I
would not be mad at all. You can have him. I would be flattered as hell.
Oh my God.
Putting that out there for when the technology exists. Feel free.
Speaking of
That's
rapey,
the sound
okay,
bite.
I was going to bring this up when we talk about Preemptive Strike, but so many things, and I have to be very careful because Sir Patrick directed the episode.
Right.
So many things.
Steve is on a first name basis with all of these people, including Terry.
So many things about the Ro-Picard dynamic in Preemptive Strike, in the physical blocking of the actors, feels very cringy to a 2023 audience. Like even just from the moment, from their first scene together, when she exits the holodeck and he's there in the corridor and they just walk, like he puts his hand on her lower back, they're walking very close. That is not appropriate workplace behavior.
Well, they go really far really quickly to make sure that you know that Picard cares about this person in a way like, oh, we haven't seen her for a couple seasons, but and
that's how you show that in 1990 whatever. It's like, oh, let me walk close 94. To you and put your arm around her. As someone who lives in the HR sphere now, like, girl, you don't do that with a coworker.
No.
You gotta walk at least 2 feet apart, please.
Well, it's making me think of the do you remember like before he ran for president, that like all of the sort of like touchy-feely Joe Biden like massaging women's shoulders stuff,
right, smelling hair and whatever.
Right. And I read somewhere someone said it's possible, and it's actually the most likely that he's not being sexually creepy. He's being paternal.
No, he's definitely being paternal. But creepy to a modern audience, but
the paternal is also not okay. Like we see that now.
Ro has big daddy issues.
For sure.
Sure, but also paternal in the workplace it's just differently creepy. It's like still not right. The paternal touching it's just a different kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy because it's gendered. I think we don't see. If that was Wesley coming back from a training and he was going to send him on a mission, he would not have put his hand in the small of Wesley's back as they walked down the hallway, And I think that's why it made me think, were they hinting at a romance here?
Well, yeah, because he's never done that with anybody. I can't think of any character that he's been that casually intimate with.
Yeah. Without
having some purpose behind it.
Well, even go back to his actual there's the episode of Lessons where he has the new science officer, the girlfriend episode. Yeah. even with that, he was so reluctant to go there. Like, it was so hard for him to do that I don't think he would have. That's not how we have known him to be, you know.
I think part of it is the writers were pushing for something darker. I mean, they were a couple seasons into Deep Space Nine at that point. It was turning darker, and they had Voyager coming up. So I think that if you watch some of the last half of the seventh season, there's a few clunkers in there, but I think that they turn darker in some ways. Like the characters, it's not just the end of a character arc. It's like the characters have shifted a little, and for some reason, Troy falls in love with Worf. I don't that relationship never made sense to me.
No.
You know?
Agreed.
Right. Well, I think that we are running out of our coming up on our time. Gentlemen, is there anything else you'd like to say about either of these episodes or our favorite Bajoran, except for Kira?
Yeah, when is Kira Nerys gonna? She's out there.
Has anyone seen Nana Visitor dance? Because she's amazing.
Now that's a whole other door that you've just opened. But she was like an assistant choreographer for Fosse. Like, she wasn't just a Broadway dancer. She was like that dance captain.
Roxy in Chicago.
Yes, she was in Chicago. Her mother was a dancer. I mean, it's
Sid Charisse is her aunt.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. She's the Broadway baby.
She's for real. Yeah. No, she's
she's the real deal.
We have talked about Nana in my unnamed workplace full of handsome women.
You want to get really gay?
Yeah.
Tommy Tune mentions Nana in his memoirs.
Oh.
I think I hope I'm not messing this up. She briefly was with him in one of his later tours.
Well, we drop a lot of unsubstantiated facts here, so
right.
No need to fact check.
That's the MO on Hailing Frequencies Open.
I may totally know that. I may be thinking Sandy Duncan.
Don't make me cite my source.
It might have been Sandy Duncan.
One of the two. They're interchangeable, right?
Do not confuse Sandy Duncan.
I'm flying.
Oh God. We've gone off the rails.
Nana does show up in an episode of Lower Decks. And the fun thing, she also does random guest voices on Family Guy. So seeing her in Lower Decks, I kept imagining like her Family Guy characters because it's her, just her voice. I don't know. It was
her Family Guy voice is not disguised by any means.
No, it's just her voice.
Yeah.
And she plays multiple characters. Like, she's, Brian's girlfriend in an episode, and then she's like some neighbor's mom in an episode, and it's always the same voice.
Also, just saying, putting it out there that Nana will be at the Gay Star Trek convention the first week of May.
Ugh.
That is happening in Philadelphia. I'm not advertising it.
Convention?
Put it on your calendar. It's halfway between where you live and where I live.
Wait, how is it advertised? Is it the Gay Star Trek convention?
No, it's called it's Gays in Space.
God,
now I'm advertising that. All right, it's Gays in Space, which is an Instagram, and they
calling it like DNI
Con.
DNI Con.
So it's like inclusion. There's like the Orville will be there also, and you get Batleth training with Gowron and Martok. And
wait, the actual Gowron? How old is he?
He's old. Robert O'Reilly. He's old. I don't think they do. I think there's like some fight choreographers, and they're sort of playing like Statler and Waldorf. Is the idea that I get.
Right.
Damien, when are we going?
Well, hey, listen, I mentioned it to Colby, and I thought he would roll his eyes, and he's like, "I could be Janeway with the bouffant. I just need the uniform."
Guys, I really want to go, but that's my birthday weekend, and Tim has planned a whole thing.
Let me handle Tim O'Donnell. Come on.
Oh my God.
I hope you heard that.
Okay. Before you get me into any more trouble.
No. Yeah, we better sign off. Close those hailing frequencies, Mike.
Steve, thank you so much for being here. I really hope you come back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you, Damien, as always, for being amazing. And thank you, listeners, for sticking with us to the end. If you like what you've heard, make sure you give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast. And you can find more of us on hailingfrequenciesopen.com or on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want to look at Hailing Freak Open. And with that, I'll say Hailing Frequencies closed.